So, welcome to Dee's Practice Pod. Today we have Les DeMerle, who, what can I say about this guy? What a career. Look at that back wall over there. Look at this side wall. Um, I've seen him play a few times at the Long Island Drum Center and a couple of other venues. Um, it's aging me and probably the both of us the last time I did see you, because the last time I saw you live was when the Drum Center was at Charles Court in Belmore.
Oh, wow.
So that's a while ago.
Yeah,
You
that's a
know?
while
But
back. Yeah.
this guy doesn't stop. He's continuing to go. So let's just let's start with having you give me a list of the people you've played with, because it's a list.
Man.
I don't want to start it because I'd rather have you do it, because you'll do it in some semblance of chronological order. Go
Right.
ahead.
Okay. Well, first of all, Andy, thanks for having me on the show. I'm really looking forward to the interview. And you're very close to my roots because you're in Long Island, aren't you?
Yes.
And I was born in Brooklyn, New York, but I was raised in Middle Village, Long Island, which is close to Rego Park, Queens, and all that.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Went to Jackson Heights to Newtown High School, and when I was in actually I was when I was about 8 years old, I started taking drum lessons from a guy named Bob Livingston, who got me my first breaks after I started practicing diligently, like 6 hours a day. I had a high school band and all that, but I got my first break with Lionel Hampton at 16
Wow. What a
in
break.
yeah, in New York. I've sat in with him at the Metropole when I was 16 years old, and I did well enough to where he asked me for my number. And even though I was that young, and I did a few weekends with his band, at the Steel Pier in Atlantic City. I was still going to high school at the
Wow.
time. And then I also had some really cool breaks in Manhattan. I worked clubs on the East Side. Barbara Kelly's Hat and Cane was one of them, where I would hire traditional jazz musicians like Tony Parenti, great clarinet player from New York. I mean, from New Orleans, excuse me, New Orleans, and piano players like Bob Hammer, who wrote for Woody Herman. So with these professional contacts, I started to get better gigs, and I was already in Downbeat magazine, you know. And so the list after Lionel Hampton, I got to play. I replaced Buddy Rich with Harry James's band from 1970 to 83. I did 3 albums with Harry, and one of them was a Grammy Award-winning album, the King James version. Also played a lot with Richie Cole. I played with Frank Sinatra, Tony Bennett, Lou Rawls, Sarah Vaughan, um, Eddie Jefferson, the Manhattan Transfer, Wayne Newton, even in Vegas. I did a lot of years in Vegas with Wayne. And now I'm producing the Amelia Island Jazz Festival, which is my big project, and also doing cruise ship gigs with my quartet featuring my wife, Bonnie Eisel, who I met in Chicago. And we've got about 14 CDs out together. And I've got another, a slew of them, including my transfusion bands, which were the high energy drumming that I did in the 70s in LA with people like Eric Marienthal, who was in that band from Chick Corea's band, and Manolo Badrina, who later went with Weather Report, on percussion.
Wow.
So that's about it. And now I just played last year with Delfio Marsalis. And this year I'm bringing in John Pizzarelli from New York to headline the Amelia Island Jazz Festival. So that's
Wow.
just some of my credits right there.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot. So you say you started when you were 8. What gave you the bug? I mean, I know your teacher was, but what enticed you to play?
Well, I'll tell you, when I was a kid, and I know a lot of my students, including guys that became famous, like Dom Famularo is one of my students, and
I know
and
Don very well. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Good guy.
when I was a kid, I was always tapping on things, and picking up knives and forks and playing rhythms. And my dad was not a musician. My father was a plumbing and heating contractor in Brooklyn. He had a very big business. He had 47 plumbers working for him, and they had some of the big accounts in New York, like Woolworths and all these big corporations that
Right.
he worked with. But anyway, my father would watch my career, my desires as a kid, and also my younger brother Larry. And we liked horses when we were kids because we would go to dude ranches for vacations in the summertime. I was about
Right.
7 years old. So that what happened was from going to the dude ranches, Andy, my father figured, okay, if they really are into horses, then we'll enroll them out at Eastern Military Academy out in Cold Springs Harbor. You
Right.
know, and so we went and just to learn about horses when I was that old. But I shared a room with a kid in the band who was a clarinet player. So where I had my duties after our academic studies, and we worked with, we learned about horses and how to groom and ride them and jump them and all that. Then I would have to like cut lawns and stuff like that. And my roommate would go to a recital or go to a practice. And I said, man, I'm in the wrong business. I want to be playing something.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so because I was tapping on things all the time on the way home to Long Island, I asked my dad to pull a car over to a music store in Jamaica, and there was a red sparkle snare drum in the window. When I saw that red sparkle snare drum, man, that was like gold to me. I just said, that's what I want to do. I knew it. So then my dad bought me that snare drum and enrolled me with lessons with Bob Livingston, and that's how I got the bug and how I first got a drum, not a set of drums, not a practice
Neither
pad,
did
a
I.
snare
As a
drum.
matter of
Yeah.
fact,
Mm.
my first drum,
Yeah.
red sparkle snare drum.
Really, really.
This is when Sam Ash's brand name was Samson,
Yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
and it was just 6 lugs. It was not the fanciest thing in the world, but I beat holy hell out of that thing.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And the cool thing is now, Andy, I'm with Craviotto drums now. And
Okay.
I've been
Wow.
with I've been with Craviotto for about 5 years now. And Johnny Craviotto, before he passed away, he actually signed all the shells on my kits in my studio here. And I have a red sparkle set out there. I think it's on the homepage of my
That's funny.
my Facebook page. If you go there, you can see that kit.
Yes, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Great drums. Great drums.
Yeah.
I've never met any of the fellows over there, but look, you got to make a piece of art like that, you got to be a good person.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Well,
Well, also Johnny C was a drummer. A lot of the cats, that end up making drums were players.
right, right.
And he was a drummer in the 70s. He was with Buffy St. Marie and recorded a lot with those like popular groups of the day. So he's one of the guys. He really knows. He's not just a builder. He's a player and he was an incredible drum maker.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Amazing, amazing.
yeah.
Well, where did you go to study after Mr. Livingston?
Well, after Bob Livingston, I stayed with him for quite a while, and by that time, when I got with like Harry James, I'd already met Louis Belson, in L.A. and mostly at the L.A. Drum shop. He always would hang out there, the Pro Drum Shop on Vine Street. So I got a few tips from Louis. I wouldn't really say they were drum lessons, but
Or
but
advice?
all the guys that I played opposite of, like for instance, one of my early gigs in 1967 was playing at Paul's Mall in Boston with my sextet called the Les DeMerle Sound 67, and I was opposite Cannonball Adderley, and Cannonball was right down the hall at the Jazz Workshop. Well, his drummer Lewis Hayes was one of my favorite drummers at the time, and we were staying in the same hotel, only doors down the hall from each other. So
Wow.
each day I would go down to Lewis's room. I'm about 21 years old then, and I
Right.
would knock on his door. I'd say, Mr. Hayes, would you like to have coffee? I would just like to talk to you about what you did on the Jive Samba recording with Cannonball. And he said, sure, man. And then that led to him coming to my room with a practice pad, and we'd spend hours, but I never took drum lessons from Lewis Hayes, but encounters like that happen with me in my career all my life. Whenever I do the shows, like the Chicago Drum Show, all the guys that we know, like Steve Smith, Vinnie Colaiuta, Dom, of course, Daniel Glass, Greg Bissonette, they'll all come by and we play a little bit. And then I say, hey, man, how'd you do that? Show me that left hand technique on that. Or they'll ask me something, how do you do that open stroke roll?
Right.
So I mean, I've never stopped learning. And I also have 1,300 albums here, vinyl behind me.
Wow.
Right now I'm into a Dizzy Gillespie record that I hadn't listened to in about 20 years. And I'm just really knocked out by a guy named Chuck Lampkin, who was his drummer at the time. A lot of these unsung heroes, cats like that, I say, wow, well, now he's got something. Dizzy Gillespie wouldn't have hired him if he didn't do something right. And so
I'm the journeyman,
Yeah, I'm a student of the music, and the more
Oh,
the more
yeah.
I learn, the more I want to learn more.
I wonder if that's a trait more of drummers than other musicians, because I hear it more from drummers than I hear from anybody else.
You mean about just like going back to the roots and
being students of it? Not just that, but you were talking about a
Yeah.
bunch of guys hanging out and trading licks.
Oh, I see. Yeah, you mean the camaraderie,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we share that more than other musicians do, I think. I don't think we're as territorial.
Yeah. Well, for one thing, with drums, to me, it's a very entertaining instrument. We're not only audio, but we're visual.
Right.
And I know that, I've done clinics all my life. You heard me years and years ago at the
Yes.
Long Island Drum Centers, but I was doing 50 of them a year all over the world for between 1970 and about 85. I had contracts with whatever drum company I was with. They would have to book 50 clinics, and they did, So every music store I went to, whether it be the smallest little town, just say between Milwaukee and the next big town, or the biggest ones like Sam Ash or the Guitar Centers or the Pro Drum Shop in LA, or Frank's in Chicago. I did them all. And the thing is, when you do a drum clinic, you'll see a little kid there and you'll see a grandma there, and right. The grandma is not a drummer, but she's there because she's bringing somebody to the clinic. And you got a little kid who is probably the brother of the drummer who's there. I mean, maybe,
right.
Like 6 years old.
Right.
So when you I'm a pretty visual player, I'm a flashy player, and I pull no punches about that. I play a lot of crossovers. I don't do stick twirls or any of the gimmicks like that.
Right.
But I play at a high energy level, and it's hopefully exciting to a lot of people.
It always is. Speaking of excitement, it's always got to be the elephant in the room with you. Where did the grabbing onto the splash and bending it while you're playing it come?
Oh, the crash cymbal.
Yeah.
The crash cymbal. Okay. Well, before I answer that, Andy, just let me finish the last question, because we were talking about the camaraderie.
By all means, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to finish that.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, what I'm saying is that with a drum clinic, you think about that, the vibe of that. I wouldn't see like, this is not saying anything weird about saxophone players or trumpet players, but I wouldn't see a trumpet player being able to be in a room with about 50 people, and people that didn't know the trumpet, and really, it's like it's a different vibe. First of all,
yes.
Rhythm is going to get you in a way more than melody. When you have a
right, it's more innate, even if you don't have any education in it. There's still something about you as a human being that you get it.
Yeah, right. You
Yeah.
know, can you all tap your foot? Do you all know what a quarter
Right.
note is? You know, so I involve the audience, and before you know it, that's where that camaraderie it just comes together, and everybody has a
Right.
good time. You know,
Yes.
and then hopefully at the end, maybe I've inspired some more young players to become better musicians, better drummers, and I get guys that say, "Man, I haven't played in 10 years, but I want to get back to it now." You know, so
Right.
that's cool.
Yeah.
You know. So that I think I agree with you 100% that the camaraderie with drummers is more than any other instrument, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
the crash cymbal thing, Andy, I get that a lot. You know, that was
Yeah.
the cover of Jazz Rock Fusion Volume 2, which
Yep.
is a very popular book for me that's published by Hal Leonard, you know.
Right.
So what happened was I was playing at the Greek Theater in San Francisco around 1983, opposite Joni Mitchell, and she was doing this Charlie Mingus tribute. So she had in her band Tony Williams, she had Jaco Pastorius and Wayne Shorter, and
Wow.
we opened with for Joni with Richie Cole's quintet and Eddie Jefferson, and during my solo. I just jumped up and on the high 18-inch crash, I coupled, you know, I put my hand over the cymbal and I bent it to get several notes
You did that with an 18?
with an 18. Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
That's a feat of
yeah,
strength.
yeah. I had
I'm
18,
I'm
but
a power lifter. That takes a little bit to move that kind of metal.
yeah, and there was a very cool photographer who's very famous actually. His name is Tom Copy, Copi,
Yes.
and he caught that moment, you know. So then he was kind enough to send me the photo, and when I saw the photo, I couldn't believe it myself because it looks like the cymbal's going to snap. You know, it's to
Yeah.
the point where it's like, you know, taking a piece of paper like this. It had that kind of angle. Instead of that, it was like that, you know, in my arm. So the minute I got the photo, I sent it to Armin Zildjian,
Wow.
you know, and
Yeah.
you know, and Armin said, "Man, we've got to use this in some ads, you know. It's
Yeah.
like, you know, they won't break, you know, like that
Right.
kind of thing."
Did it
So
flex back to like
yeah,
normal
yeah, yeah.
flexion? Yeah. Okay.
It was a pretty thin symbol, you know. So I would do it very quickly, and I'd fast come back up, and you wouldn't even know it was bent, you know.
Wow.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
still do that today. And I never, you know, you can look at any of my symbols and you don't see them that they're bent, you know, but I use
Right.
that. That's kind of like a little trademark thing that I
Yeah. Yeah.
end
That's
solos
why
with.
I
Yeah.
had to. Anytime I've ever seen you, you've done it. So it's always it's a crowd pleaser.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
absolutely gets a reaction every single time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
So the names you've mentioned here of people you've played with, just industry giants. Tell me a little bit about like what's it like to play with Sinatra?
Well, Sinatra was one of my favorites. I had the opportunity to do it the TV show with him, titled John Denver and Friend. And actually, just yesterday, Andy, one of my friends and fans posted a photo of me playing that show. So on my Les DeMerle Facebook fan page, you can actually scroll down and look at some of the comments, and there's a link. As a matter of fact, I think it was Bruce Cobbler who wrote a book on Buddy Rich. He commented yesterday and he put the link to YouTube where you can see that whole show where I'm
Right,
playing with Sinatra, you know. Sinatra started with Harry James in 1939, way before I was born, you know.
right,
So
yeah,
he got his first break with Harry James. So when I worked with Frank Sinatra, it was always in Harry James's band. So I
right,
didn't work for Frank Sinatra, but I played his act, you know,
right,
in Harry's band, you know. His
right.
regular drummer is Irv Cotler, you know, who was
Yes,
with him for many
yeah,
years.
I've got you under my skins, or Kotler. Yeah,
Right,
right.
exactly, exactly.
Mhm.
And Irv is a dear friend of mine too. He passed on, but was a wonderful man, you know. But we're working with Frank. One of the things that Harry James taught me was, like, for instance, from a drummer's perspective, when you play the hi-hats, you know, a lot of drummers, you have to find that sweet spot where it just like you don't want to open up the hats too high because it doesn't
Right,
sound right, and you don't want to have them so choked that you don't get that long note, you know.
right,
And
Yeah, that's
one of the songs that I
sustainable.
played with Sinatra was his hit with Harry called All or Nothing at All, which is a medium tempo tune. So at the rehearsals, I would really open up those hats and I'd keep my eye on Frank like a hawk, and he'd turn around and say, "Okay, man, you got it. Now you got the sound." Because with Sinatra's music, everything is textured. That's why it's like you have to know how to listen, have big ears, lock into his time feel, which is perfect. You
Right.
know, he doesn't sing on top of the beat, he doesn't sing behind the beat, he sings right on the
He's a
beat.
pocket guy. Yeah.
Right in the pocket, just like Ray Brown plays the bass. There's
Hmm.
no messing around with that with the quarter note.
Right.
So
Right.
and then the fact that I was with Harry, and when they got together, Sinatra was always in a great mood because they've known each other so many years, and they started out together,
Right.
and he left Harry James to go with Tommy Dorsey, and then he had all the other hits, you know. And that was in the 40s. But
Yeah.
they remained buddies, and every time we played Vegas, we'd run over to hear Frank, or Frank would run over to hear Harry, and sometimes we'd play together. But that TV show is my favorite memory of playing with Frank, and I'm so glad it's documented.
Yeah. How about Mr. Benedetto?
Oh, well, Tony Bennett, that was another package that we did. Matter of fact, we played the first time at the Westbury Music Fair, which is
Uh,
probably not far from where you are.
I could practically walk there from here. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you remember the Westbury Music Fair, Andy? There was a producer named Lee Goober, and he booked some really, really musical acts to play Westbury Music Fair. And what they did was they put a package together because they have a few other theater in the rounds. They have one in Warwick, Rhode Island. I think it's called the Music Carnival or something. And then there was
Right.
another one. And so we had about 4 or 5 1-week gigs that we would do, almost like a month's worth of work. And the package was in this order. It was Tony Bennett, Sarah Vaughan, and the Harry James Orchestra.
Wow.
See?
What
So
a
it was,
night.
yeah. So I think from what I remember, of course, Harry's band opened up, and I had some solos in the first section, and then we brought on Sarah, and she was phenomenal, and then we brought on Tony Bennett, and then at the end, I got to play. They do a jam on "It Don't Mean a Thing If It Ain't Got That Swing." Out there, and it was just burning. And Tony and Sarah would scat together, and Harry would play like lines on the trumpet, like fours, as if he was scatting.
Right. Yeah.
So and we went on the road, so I got to know Tony, and Tony and I had coffee one day, and I got to tell you one of the beautiful things that he told me. We were playing a matinee. On the Wednesdays you used to have to do a matinee. So then between 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock, when the next show is, I would sometimes stay at the Westbury Music Fair and just practice. And rather than go home for an hour and then come back to
Right.
to play the gig, I'd stay. And Tony would do the same, and he practiced. He would do his scales and whatnot. So we were having coffee that day, and he said, Les, you and I have one thing in common. And I said, "What's that, Tony?" He says, "We've never worked a day in our lives." You know, he said, "We love it so much,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so that's, I mean, I work my wad off, trying to keep it all going. But when I get to play, it's not like work to me at all. It's like I'm playing, I'm having fun.
Oh, it's
And
love for the instrument.
and that's what Tony does too. That's why I just was talking to my wife Bonnie this morning. He's going to do something at Radio City Music Hall with Lady Gaga coming up in a few months, and he's 90. He's going to celebrate his 95th birthday.
That's just incredible.
Yeah,
You know?
95. And
And
Harold,
working, not
yeah,
just around,
yeah, yeah,
working.
yeah,
You know.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I got to see him just a few years ago, and I almost booked him actually at the jazz festival here. But at the night we saw him in Jacksonville, where we live in Amelia Island, Florida, Andy, which is close
Okay.
to Jacksonville.
Okay.
And after the show, we hung out with Tony and Harold Jones, his drummer, who's a dear friend of mine for many years. And Harold was 87, and man, they closed the bar, man. They were hanging out like they were 20 years old, man. Yeah.
Wow. Well, to be able to keep that youthful energy at that age, genetically, it's probably just freaky,
Uh-huh.
but
Yeah.
just to be able to, it's great to see. It's inspiring to see that
Oh,
there are people who
absolutely.
are able to do that, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so when I saw you, you did sing with your wife. Um, how did you guys meet?
Well, when Harry James passed away in 1983, I went back to New York to get back into the jazz scene there, moved back to New York from the West Coast, from LA. And then when I got back there, I was doing a lot of things with a great blues singer named Jimmy Witherspoon, and we were playing at Fat Tuesdays in the Village and a place called Carlos One. I was playing uptown with my own band at the West End Cafe, and then I got a call to go back on the road with Wayne Newton, the singer.
Hmm.
So Wayne was going to start his tour in Chicago at a place called the Holiday Star Theater in Merrillville, Indiana. And I said, okay, I'll go back on the road, So, because with his gigs, Andy, he would work like maybe in that period of time, he'd work about 6 weeks, then he'd be off for 2 or 3 weeks. So I could always come back to where my home was and keep my jazz
Right.
vibe going, keep my jazz work going, and
Mhm.
teach. And I never stopped teaching, by the way, through all these years. I'm still teaching, like later today, even, and doing Zoom lessons and all that. But anyway,
Right.
getting back to Bonnie,
We'll
when I,
get we'll get back to that. I do want
yeah,
to ask you about it, but
yeah.
let's.
Yeah, but with Bonnie, what happened was I was in Chicago, and after we played this hotel called the Holiday Star Theater, we stayed in the hotel, and there was a really hip top 40 band. They were playing like Tower of Power and really really good stuff,
Right.
in the lounge. So I would go down and sit in with them after our shows with Wayne, And one night a guy approached me and he said, "Les, I'm a drummer, but I'm also an agent." And he said, "My name is Webb Morton in Chicago here." And he says, "I know your reputation." He says, "I've been following you all these years. Would you want to stay in Chicago and work a jazz gig after you work this job with Wayne?" He says, "I could get you 13 weeks at a supper club." And I said, "Wow." And the deal was right, So Wayne was going to
Right.
be doing that movie, Las Vegas Vacation, which is a very famous movie for him with
Yes.
Chevy Chase.
Yes.
So we were going to be off for several months while he did that movie. So anyway, long story short, I took the gig and I had to hire a singer and a drummer who was a good friend of mine named Rusty Jones, who at that time was playing with Stan Getz. Said, "Les, I know a singer that if you can get her, her name is Bonnie Isel, and she's in Chicago, she's in Naperville, and she's like the favorite of all the drummers because she plays like shaker and tambourine. She's perfectly in time, and she's a great singer." So I called her and I asked her to audition for me, and then she came down and auditioned, and then we at first she couldn't work 6 nights a week. She was so popular, she could only do the weekdays. So I had to hire another singer to do the weekends, and for about a month, and then finally her schedule freed up, and I got her to work 6 nights a week. And then we fell in love, and we got married about a year later, and we've been married 33 years now. And she's beautiful.
God bless you. Yeah, I love to hear stories about people that have been married a long time. This December I'll be married 28, and
Oh, congratulations.
count the number of my friends that have been married long durations. Usually they're on wife number two, three, four, or
Yeah,
just
yeah.
gave up entirely. You know, but there is something just otherworldly about finding the right person,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
knowing that and being sensitive to it too,
Yeah.
and not being selfish, just
No.
working as a team.
Yeah.
And obviously you guys got it cracked. If 33 years, that's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Well,
Oh,
the other dynamic, Andy, is that when you work, not only live together, of course, but you work together as intensely as we do, that takes a special kind of understanding,
yes.
because you wear, it's like I'm a band leader, and when we're working, I come up with these ideas, and sometimes she'll say, "Well, this is a little too far out," but I always listen to not only her but all my sidemen too, and just try to make it best for. To where they're all comfortable. But
Well,
she'll,
that's the sign of a good leader.
Yeah,
A leader
exactly.
isn't just someone who barks commands. A leader is someone who keeps the ship afloat,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
sometimes that means listening.
Right, right.
Oh,
And the cool thing right now, Andy, is we're also like doing some of these cruise contracts where we go out for 3 months, and I bring a pretty young band with me, because you have to have the stamina
yeah,
to play 6 nights a week, 3 shows a night for 3 or 4 months straight,
right.
and thank God I'm healthy enough. I go to the gig every night wanting to play, and I bring out some young guys with me. Our piano player is 23 and our bass player is 30. He's from Canada. And Bonnie and I, we're the senior members, of course. But when we get on the bandstand, we all listen to each other. We all learn from each other, and
Right,
they have the talent to cut the gig, which is not an easy gig. There's a lot of reading involved, a lot of structure, even though it's a jazz gig.
right.
Yeah.
What's it
So
what's it like to play on a ship? I mean, I've been on ships before, but never in a professional capacity. As you're playing, are you feeling the ebb and flow of the boat? And does that affect your timing at all?
that's a good question. Well, first of all, Andy, we play on like we go out to on cruise contracts 3 different ways, and the size of the ship has a lot to do with the way the ship feels when it's in the high seas and
Right,
say bad weather. When we were on Celebrity, we were doing the Baltic and the Mediterranean. We played all over the world with cruise gigs. As a matter of fact, our latest album is called Hot Night in Venice. It was recorded in Venice, Italy at the Venice Jazz Club. And that was done. Well, we had an off night on a ship. I booked a gig in Venice, and we recorded at the club. So we went all over the world. So anyway, if we're on a ship that's like a 2,500 passenger ship, like the Celebrity ships, and you hit some high seas, that ship is going to move more than say our latest contracts have been with Royal Caribbean on 6,000 passenger ships. They're the mega
they're
ships, and
huge.
they
Yeah,
have jazz rooms. So on those ships, you hardly even know that you're on a ship. The ship is so huge, and the ships have stabilizers, so that when they are in rough weather, you're not hardly even going to feel that.
then it makes the ship
And
makes the adjustment.
yeah,
Right.
and the smaller ships, when we go out as guest entertainers, like on Oceania or Regent, those are 1,700 passenger ships. And those ships, because they're smaller, if they encounter rough weather, you're going to feel that. You're going to really feel it. Now, from a drummer's point of view, we're sitting down, unlike a singer who's standing up. Who's got to hold on the piano with one hand to make sure she doesn't fall or he doesn't fall.
Right.
But the fact that we're grounded, or at least sitting down, I mean, it does. Once in a while, if there's a jolt, yeah, it'll mess with your time for a minute.
Right.
You got to get back, put your shoe back on, get back on the pedal.
Right. How about the equipment? Does it jostle around a little bit in that case?
Sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. It depends, Andy. Like when we play in the big theaters, I always have a drum rug, so the drums
That
don't
certainly
walk,
helps.
don't
Yeah.
walk. Yeah, but some of the drummers actually go on those ships and do those shows without a drum rug, and then I see that if they hit with it, I mean,
Oh
the
yeah.
equipment's all over the place.
Yeah. The dancer's got to go bring the bass drum back.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
But
funny.
we have a ball doing it, and it's not, I remember the days I came up in that era where there were jazz gigs 6 nights a week. But nowadays it's not like that. You can count them on one hand how
Yeah.
many you do a Monday and a weekend maybe, and then next week a Wednesday. And that's how it is most towns.
Right.
So to go out on a ship and not have to move the drums, to be set up in a jazz room where my band is featured as the
Right.
headlining act, and then we get off the ship at every port. We're like passengers. And I mean
And
it's
treated well.
and yeah, we were treated pretty well. We do go crew status because we have to know the safety drills in order
Sure.
to be on a ship for 3 months, just in case
Right.
there's an emergency. And you want to
Right.
know the safety drills so you know how to help
Sure.
people
I've
and
seen
also help
Titanic.
yourself.
You really
Yeah.
want to know that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I mean, it's a cool thing, and the camaraderie that you get with the fans. I mean, if I'm playing, like, say, at the Blue Note, and I meet somebody and say, Les, we heard you with Harry James, and you talk for a few minutes, and then they're gone. But on the ship, you get a guy come up and say, Les, I heard you and Bonnie at the so and so Jazz Festival, Amelia Island Jazz Festival, and I said, okay, cool, let's have some coffee tomorrow. And then we get to have lunch together, and
Yeah.
really create a friendship, a bond. And not only with our fans, but also with all the other musicians, because we all live in the same area. So
Right.
it's kind of like a dormitory in a way. You got the Latin band down the block here, and the
Right.
top 40 band, and the comedian, and it's cool because it's all show business.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's great.
So we love it. We love it. We have a good time.
Yeah. You teach.
Yeah, I teach.
Yes, you're in my teaching facility now. Yeah, I've been doing it. I guess 24 years. I've been playing for 43. Something
Wow,
like that.
great.
So this is
Uh-huh.
like you. This is every bit a part of me as my eye color.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
How much? How do you split your? I'm doing more teaching right now than playing. COVID really. I was with two bands for I guess 10 years, and
Uh-huh.
they both folded over COVID. It was both
Mhm.
original material stuff, so there was literally nowhere other than to put it online to get that out. You know, um,
Yep. Mhm.
how do you split your playing time and your educating time? Like, what's the ratio?
Well, it depends, just like you said, Andy, whether we have a lot of work. If I have a lot of work, like for instance, the cruise ships, I don't teach, I mean,
Right,
because I'm out there playing every night. But when I'm home, and we left with COVID also, when that hit the industry, just about a year and a half ago was our last cruise engagement.
right,
We came back to Amelia Island here, and then I notified my students that I'm going to be teaching. But we did it almost all by Zoom,
yep,
and because of COVID at that time. Now it's
yep,
starting to open up a little bit here, and I'm doing about maybe eight students a week live, and
right.
some of them are 2-hour sessions. I have
Wow,
some people pros that like 1 hour working with me goes by like 15 minutes.
I
So
got you.
they book a 2-hour session, and most of my students though are 1 hour, but several of them are 2 hours.
Right,
And then like I'll do, like this week I'm teaching tomorrow, Thursday and Saturday, and my Friday and today I'll be able to do business for the Jazz Festival. About 6 o'clock tonight. I practice every day. About 6 o'clock, I go out and I'll work out for at least an hour. Keep my chops up and keep
yeah,
new ideas kept coming in all the time. And so I'm as long as I'm playing, whether it be playing live with my band or or teaching. And
right,
I do when I teach. I don't know how you teach, Andy, but I have two sets set up.
yep, so do I.
So I have a lot of dialogue constantly going on between the students. And if it's a Zoom session, many times, of course, they'll have their drum set up no matter where they
Right.
are.
Yeah.
And I'm also trying to elevate my studio with the whole the way the sound of the studio, the lighting in the studio. I've got a mixer and a switcher and all this stuff, so
Right.
you can see the bass drum camera on the bass drum and so it's I'm trying to, and I'll record some of those and start to put some lesson packages together within the next few months.
That sounds good. Yeah, I still have yet to. I mean, sound wise and everything. I'm already there. You can record the lesson,
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
but I have enough cameras so that you can see me behind the kit. This kit's it's monstrous. It's it's the pig at the farm that got too big to slaughter. So this one
Uh-huh.
just sits on a platform here. When I go to
Uh-huh.
gig, I play with something that a more reasonable person would play with. But here, this is my toys, and
Yeah,
this way
yeah.
I can work out anything because I have every tool at my disposal, you
Oh,
know. But it's a little harder to see, therefore the cameras so that
yeah,
anyone can see exactly what you're doing. But
yeah,
yeah, it's technology has really changed a lot of what we do and how quickly you can get information out and um, uh, Zoom lessons. Without that,
yeah,
we'd have been dead in the water.
yeah,
I mean, I
yeah,
know of people
yeah.
that didn't make that transition,
Right.
didn't set themselves up, and they're done now.
Yeah, yeah,
They
yeah,
got paper routes.
yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so
No, you got to keep up with it. And,
yeah,
it's just amazing. I talk to a lot of my younger students and I say, man, you guys, you have no idea how lucky you are to just have the internet, because when we were all coming up, we went out to hear these bands live, or you bought a record, but you didn't really see videos nowhere near like you do today. You know
right.
what I mean? So, but I wouldn't trade that though for anything in the world, because there's
Yeah.
no better experience to have it. I mean, the nights that I've seen Buddy, Max, Art Blakey, Purdy, Joe Morello.
Uh,
So,
Nothing beats live.
I've seen them all
Yeah.
live and hung out with most of them after the gigs,
Right.
and dressing up to go into Manhattan to sit in a club and just really dig the music
You're there
and
for a purpose.
yeah,
And you're
it's
not
an
there with your
event.
phone doing anything, or
Yeah, yeah,
you're
you're
there
focused.
just to get there.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. Yeah,
that's,
yeah.
I wish more people would get into that
That
position.
head, yeah, that
I'm a
head. Yeah.
big, I don't play Broadway, but I like to go to Broadway performances, firstly
Right.
because I don't have the desire to do that. So
Yeah.
now I can go to the show just as a spectator and enjoy it.
Right.
And I'm not looking at it just as a professional and putting my 2 cents in.
Right.
And the number of times I see people, they got their phones out, they got their little pads out
Yeah.
while the performance is going on. I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
what are you doing? You did pay the same amount I did for my ticket, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
into this thing for like $300, guys.
Yeah.
What are
Yeah.
you doing?
Yeah.
I don't understand it.
It's also a distraction to the people around you, because you see
Yes,
that bright light over there. I mean,
absolutely.
I've seen people do that in movie theaters. I can't believe it.
Oh yeah,
You know,
yeah.
dark movie theaters, and then a
Right.
big lighted
Nothing
cell
takes
phone
you
comes
out
in,
of the
Yeah.
experience like
No.
another screen over
Yeah.
there. Yeah,
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
a little crazy, a little crazy.
Yeah. But anyway, life is life.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. But it's for us. I think the whole technological aspect of things is a good thing, and it can be. Well, let's put it this way. I think it can also be a little overwhelming, because you go onto YouTube and you can just go on a journey. You can watch
Yeah.
one person's thing, and then next to it you have all of these thumbnails of other stuff, and
Right.
by the time you get done, it says, I have been playing for 40 years, right?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
and I think it makes it even more important, even though a lot of the information's out there, that you do have an actual teacher that you personally go to, because then
Hmm.
it can help you sift through that. I like to
Exactly.
use the analogy, well, if I go to the Library of Congress
Hmm.
and I start with book number one, by the time I get to the other book, I know everything, right?
Hmm.
No,
No.
yes
No.
and no. What do you do
Yeah.
with all that information? You have to
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
somebody help guide you. And that's
Right.
what I think a teacher
Exactly.
does first and foremost, is more guidance than
Right.
anything else. Anybody can just get the information. It's, well,
Right.
what do you do with it? You know?
Right.
So now that things are opening up, what's next for you?
Well, the big project for us, Andy, now is the Amelia Island Jazz Festival. My wife and I started it as a not-for-profit. We give out scholarships every year to high school musicians to study jazz in college.
Wow.
you know, and we've got, I think, 3 or 4 kids that are in the program right now. The new scholar is a trumpet player from our area named Wyatt Bruno. He's 17, and he plays like Maynard Ferguson. He's a high note player, but he also plays jazz, you know. So we're bringing the Jazz Festival is October 3rd to the 10th. And we have a great website. It's AmeliaIslandJazzFestival.com. And it's 35 minutes from the Jacksonville airport. We're close to Jacksonville, Florida. We're on the East Coast, and right at the tip of the state below Georgia, Amelia Island. Beautiful place to live here. And so what's on my plate right now is all the final details. I book over 100 musicians for that week. We have outdoor concerts, we have jazz wine tastings, we have brunches, headlining concerts with John Pizzarelli and his trio. Kenny Poplowski's coming in. Last year we had Delphio Marsalis. We've also in past years had Ramsey Lewis and David Sanborn, you know, big guns, you know.
Big guns.
And then we've also got things going on like a swing night with my little big band, which is a 9-piece band. And then we've got a Latin night. A group comes in from Seattle called Trio Caliente. And we've got a sponsor party. And so all of these are different venues. So today, after we do our interview, I'll be working on finalizing some of those details like that. And, you know, we're trying to keep jazz alive, you know, especially in North Florida. We're not in a big city here. So we have a lot of people that fly in for the festival from Europe, from all over the country. And and the locals love it and support it, you know. But that's our baby. Bonnie and I, that's our baby now. You know, we don't have kids. We have 14 CDs together, and we've got 18 jazz festivals, you know. But the amount of kids that we touch with our jazz festivals, especially, and we also do things in the schools, you know. Last Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, I did a summer drum camp for 5th graders.
Wow.
Out at a local school. So I taught them, you know, how to hold the sticks. I mean, the basics, the quarter note, the 8th note, 16th note, 32nd note. And before that,
Get 'em
3
started.
days, before that 3 days, they could all play a simple rock beat and a drum fill. And hopefully some of them will go into drumming, you know.
Well,
So whether it be the most seasoned player, like if I'm jamming with Danny Glass, you know, and we're doing a clinic together, or whether it be the most basic when you're dealing with kids, as long as I'm giving out good vibes and, you know, passing it on,
that's what it's all about.
like the way Bob Livingston passed it on to me, you know,
Right.
that's the whole thing right there, man. That's it.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. It's beautiful. Well, I'm glad that you're so busy and you're not slowing down one iota. So that's fantastic.
Thank you.
I can only hope that I'm as lucky to keep going in the same way you have been.
Oh, you look like you're in great shape, and you're,
Well,
you know, you're
I
right
do okay.
there. You're right. You're right there. You're doing what you love. That's key,
Yeah.
man. You know,
Yeah.
if you live what you love, you keep
Yeah.
doing it, you know?
So,
Yeah.
well, it was fantastic to talk to you. I'd like to invite you at a later date to come back and talk more. Maybe even more about, you know, get into a little bit more of the minutia of the things we were already speaking about. It's been a very much of a pleasure to speak to you.
Thank you, Andy.
What else can I say? I'm so happy to have made this happen with you and gotten a chance to talk to you, because I've been an admirer of you for a long time.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you so much. Thank you. And keep it going. What you're doing for drummers and for music is a really positive and great thing. So good. Congratulations on your work.
I'm glad you think so, and I hope a lot of people come and watch this, because it's just great to see great people doing great things.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Andy. Thank you.
Thank you much. This has been Dee's Practice Pod, and I'll see you next time.